Welcome to the True Crime Studio. In this gripping tale, a wealthy entrepreneur invites his former lover to celebrate his upcoming nuptials. Little does he know, this decision will lead to an unexpected revelation that will change his life forever. As the wedding day approaches, excitement and anticipation fill the air, but nothing could prepare him for the surprise that awaits.
Jack Thompson adjusting his Italian silk tie in his office atop the tallest corporate building in New York City. At 35, he had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of: an estimated fortune in the billions, international recognition, and soon a royal-worthy wedding to Emily Richardson, heiress to an agribusiness empire. His fingers slid over the golden envelope on his mahogany desk, one of 300 invitations specially designed for what promised to be the event of the year. But there was one in particular that interested him, the one addressed to Sarah Collins, his ex-girlfriend from college days. "Are you sure about this, Jack?" asked Thomas, his personal assistant, observing him with concern. "It's been almost 6 years since you've seen each other." Jack smiled, that smile that used to precede his biggest deals. "Absolutely. Sarah needs to see where I've gotten. She needs to understand that I made the right choice when I left her behind." The businessman recalled his last encounter with Sarah on a rainy March afternoon. She had begged him not to leave for London, claiming to have something important to tell him. But Jack was determined. He had secured a unique opportunity to work at an international investment bank, and nothing would stop him. "Have it delivered personally," he ordered, handing the envelope to Thomas. "I want to make sure she receives it." 2 weeks later, Jack was in his mansion in the Hamptons, savoring a rare wine when his cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Thomas. Invitation delivered. She confirmed her attendance. The businessman smiled with satisfaction, imagining Sarah's expression when she saw his current life. The ceremony would be held in a historic castle he had rented exclusively for the occasion. 300 guests selected from the cream of society, a banquet signed by a Michelin-starred chef, flowers imported from Holland, every detail meticulously planned to demonstrate his power and success. Emily entered the home office, her Louboutin heels echoing on the Italian marble floor. "Honey, we need to approve the party menu," she said, hugging him from behind. "The chef is waiting." Jack nodded distractedly, his thoughts still fixed on Sarah. How would she be? What had she done with her life? Certainly not much, considering she still lived in the same middle-class neighborhood where he had met her. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of final preparations. Jack personally supervised every detail, determined to create an unforgettable event. Not just for his guests, but especially for Sarah to see everything he had accomplished without her. On the eve of the ceremony, during the final rehearsal, Emily noticed something different about her fiancé. "You're acting strange, Jack. Did something happen?" "Just nerves," he lied, adjusting his tie once again. He couldn't tell her about Sarah, about his plans to showcase his success. Emily wouldn't understand. That night, alone in his penthouse, Jack opened his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He searched for Sarah on social media. He found only a basic professional profile, without personal photos. She had graduated in education and worked at a school. Predictable, he thought, closing the computer with disdain. The big day dawned with a resplendent sun, as if even the weather conspired in Jack's favor. Helicopters were making the air bridge, carrying the most important guests to the castle. The press jostled at the gates, eager to capture the arrival of celebrities and businessmen. Jack waited in the castle's main room, watching the arrival of guests through the window. His custom Italian tuxedo was impeccable, as was his plan to show Sarah how grand his life had become without her. "Mr. Thompson," Thomas called from the door. "The first guests are already arriving at the cocktail reception." Jack nodded, his mind wandering to the moment Sarah would arrive. He had instructed the reception team to inform him immediately of her arrival. He wanted to be strategically positioned to see her reaction to the luxury and ostentation of the event. What Jack didn't know was that fate had prepared a much bigger surprise than any he could have planned. Sarah would indeed attend the wedding, but not alone. And her arrival was about to transform that day into something very different from what he had imagined. As he adjusted his diamond cufflinks, Jack couldn't imagine that in a few hours his life would change completely. The meticulously crafted plan to humiliate his ex-girlfriend was about to turn into a lesson he would never forget. The orchestra began to play in the garden, signaling the start of the festivities. Jack took a deep breath, rehearsed his best smile, and prepared to make his triumphant entrance. The show was about to begin, but the real spectacle would be very different from what he had planned. The cocktail reception preceding the ceremony was in full swing in the castle gardens. Waiters circulated with glasses of Dom Pérignon champagne, while the chamber orchestra performed classical compositions. Jack mingled among the guests with his characteristic, calculated smile, though his eyes constantly scanned the main entrance. "Mr. Thompson," Thomas whispered in his ear during a brief pause between greetings. "She just arrived." Jack's heart instantly accelerated. He excused himself from the group of executives he was talking to and positioned himself strategically near the main staircase, where he could observe without being immediately noticed. Sarah appeared wearing an elegant navy blue dress, though simple compared to the extravagant outfits of the other guests. Her brown hair was still long as he remembered, though now it framed a more mature face. But it wasn't her appearance that made Jack freeze in place. It was the small hand she was holding. Beside her, a boy of about 5 years old looked in wonder at the sumptuous decoration. His green eyes, identical to Jack's, shone with the same intensity that his had when he was a child. The slightly wavy black hair, the shape of his face, even the way he furrowed his brow in curiosity. It was like looking at a photo of his own childhood. "Mom, look at all the flowers," exclaimed the little one, pointing to the cascades of orchids decorating the columns. Jack felt the air escape from his lungs. His legs weakened and he needed to lean against one of the marble columns. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his mind. Sarah's insistence that he not travel to London, the frustrated attempts at contact in the first months after his departure, the time that had passed. "Mr. Thompson, are you all right?" asked Thomas, noticing his paleness. Jack didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the scene unfolding. Sarah bent down to adjust the boy's bow tie, a gesture so maternal and at the same time so painfully familiar. How many moments like this had he missed? Emily approached, radiant in her wedding dress, during what should have been just a quick appearance before the ceremony. "Honey, I came to take a peek at the decoration and—" She stopped upon noticing her fiancé's disturbed expression. "Jack? What's wrong?" But he barely heard her. Sarah had just spotted Jack and their gazes crossed for the first time in 6 years. There was no anger in her eyes, as he expected, only a serenity that disconcerted him even more. "Who is that boy?" asked Emily, following her fiancé's fixed gaze. Before Jack could answer, the little one tripped on one of the steps of the staircase. Instinctively, Jack moved in his direction, but Sarah was quicker, supporting her son. "Careful, Ethan," she said sweetly, and the name hit Jack like a punch to the stomach. Ethan, the same name as his grandfather, the one who had raised him, and for whom he had always had deep admiration. Emily observed the scene with growing suspicion. "Jack, do you know that woman?" The question hung in the air when Ethan, already recovered from the near fall, looked directly at Jack. The boy's innocent smile, so similar to his own, made his heart tighten. "Mom, who is that man?" The childish voice echoed through the hall, attracting curious glances from nearby guests. Sarah hesitated for a moment before answering, her voice calm but firm. "He's the groom, Ethan, the owner of the party." Jack took a step forward, then another, as if an invisible force pulled him towards the two. His plans for humiliation and revenge had dissolved the instant he saw that small reflection of himself. "Sarah." His voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. "Hello, Jack," she responded with a dignity that completely disarmed him. "Congratulations on the wedding." Emily, realizing something was wrong, positioned herself next to her fiancé, her wedding dress brushing the marble floor. "Jack, aren't you going to introduce me?" The murmur of the guests decreased, as if everyone sensed they were about to witness something extraordinary. The orchestra continued playing, but it seemed distant, like a surreal soundtrack for the moment unfolding. Ethan, oblivious to the growing tension, let go of Sarah's hand and took a few steps towards Jack, his green eyes fixed on the identical ones of the businessman. "Your castle is very beautiful," he said with the simplicity characteristic of children. Jack felt tears form in his eyes for the first time in years. All his empire, all his success, all the wealth he had accumulated, none of it seemed to have any meaning in the face of that small being who carried his blood. The dream wedding he had meticulously planned was about to turn into something completely different. And for the first time in his adult life, Jack Thompson had no control over the situation, nor did he want to have. The main hall of the castle seemed to spin around Jack as he watched Ethan approach. Emily, realizing something was terribly wrong, gripped his arm tightly. "Jack, I'm waiting for an explanation," she whispered through clenched teeth, maintaining her perfectly rehearsed social smile. Thomas, always attentive, began discreetly ushering the closest guests towards the garden where the cocktail reception continued. The orchestra's music providentially increased in volume, creating a sound curtain for the scene unfolding. "How you have the same eyes as me," exclaimed Ethan with the honesty characteristic of children, now standing directly in front of Jack. Emily let out a muffled exclamation, finally connecting the dots. Her face, impeccably made up for the wedding photos, visibly paled. "Sarah," Jack finally managed to articulate, his voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk." "Now is not the time," she replied firmly, approaching to hold her son's hand. "You have a wedding to perform." "No," the word escaped Jack's lips with a certainty that surprised him. "Now is exactly the time." Emily released his arm as if she had been burned. "What do you mean, now is the time?" "Jack, 300 people are waiting for our wedding." "Thomas," called Jack without taking his eyes off Ethan, "please take Emily to the castle office and ask them to serve more champagne to the guests." "You can't be serious," protested Emily, but Thomas was already gently leading her away by the arm, whispering something about discretion and scandals. Sarah observed everything with a calmness that only years of single motherhood could have given her. "Ethan, sweetheart, why don't you go with Aunt Jessica to see the peacocks in the garden?" A woman who had been discreetly positioned a few meters behind, apparently a friend of Sarah's, approached and extended her hand to Ethan. "But, Mom," the boy began, clearly fascinated by Jack. "Just for a little while, son. Mommy needs to talk to Mr. Thompson." When they were finally alone in the hall, the silence weighed between them like lead. Jack felt his heart beating so hard he was sure Sarah could hear it. "Why did you never tell me?" was the first question he managed to formulate. Sarah let out a humorless laugh. "Tell you? I tried, Jack. For weeks before you left, I tried to tell you I was pregnant. But you were so focused on your big opportunity in London that you barely listened to me. You could have insisted. You could have begged more, humiliated myself more," she interrupted, and for the first time her composure cracked slightly. "You made it very clear that your career was more important than anything we had." Jack ran his hands through his hair, messing up the perfectly styled hairdo for the wedding photos. Memories of those last days before his departure flooded his mind. Sarah trying to talk, him always busy with meetings, documents, preparations. "After you left," she continued, her voice softer now, "I tried to contact you, calls, emails, messages. You changed all your contacts. Your assistant at the time said you were too busy to answer. I didn't know. I never imagined." "Of course you didn't imagine, Jack. You were too busy building your empire to imagine that you had left behind much more than a college girlfriend." The words hit him like precise arrows. Every decision he had made, every step he had climbed in his ascent to success, now seemed empty and meaningless in the face of the revelation that he was a father. "Ethan," he pronounced the name as if testing its flavor. "Does he know about me?" Sarah shook her head. "He knows he has a father, but he doesn't know who it is. I never wanted to lie to him, but I also didn't want him to grow up feeling abandoned." "I need to fix this," Jack declared, a new determination arising in his voice. "I need to be part of his life." "And how do you intend to do that? By marrying another woman? Continuing your life as if nothing had happened?" The mention of the wedding made Jack look towards the door through which Emily had left. The wedding of his dreams, the event of the year, all of that now seemed to belong to another life, a life that was no longer his. "No," he answered firmly, "I'm going to do the right thing. For the first time in a long time, I'm going to do the right thing." The growing murmur coming from the gardens indicated that the guests were beginning to get restless. The scheduled time for the ceremony was approaching, and the groom's prolonged absence did not go unnoticed. Jack, however, remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the window overlooking the garden, where he could see Ethan playing near the peacocks. "He likes animals," Sarah commented softly, following his gaze. "He wants to be a veterinarian when he grows up." Jack felt his heart tighten. How many dreams, how many little discoveries of his son had he missed? "How is he in school?" he asked, thirsty for information about the boy. Intelligent, curious, and stubborn, Sarah smiled slightly. Just like you at his age. Thomas reappeared in the hall, his normally impassive expression now clearly worried. Mr. Thompson, Miss Emily is demanding your presence. And the guests are starting to ask questions. Jack straightened his shoulders, making a decision that would forever change the course of several lives. Gather the groomsmen, Emily's parents, and my parents in the library. Now. As Thomas left to carry out his orders, Jack turned to Sarah. Can you stay with Ethan a little longer? I need to resolve this. Sarah nodded, an indecipherable expression on her face. We didn't come here to cause problems, Jack. If you want, we can leave. No, he replied quickly, almost desperately. Please, stay. I need to fix a lot of things. The castle library, with its mahogany bookcases reaching to the ceiling and crystal chandeliers, soon filled with the most important people of the ceremony. Emily sat rigidly in a velvet armchair, her parents standing by her side like guardians. Jack's parents, Robert and Grace Thompson, exchanged worried glances. Son, what's going on? Asked Grace, noticing Jack's disturbed expression. Jack took a deep breath, facing each person present in the room. The wedding is cancelled. The chaos was instantaneous. Emily stood up in a jump, her wedding dress rustling. Have you gone mad? She shouted. You can't cancel a $3 million wedding just like that. I can and I will, he replied with a calmness he didn't feel. I just discovered that I have a son. The silence that followed was deafening. Grace brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes wide. Robert, always so controlled, let himself fall heavily into a nearby chair. Son? Stammered Emily's mother. What do you mean? Sarah, my ex-girlfriend from college, is here with our son. Ethan is 5 years old and I never knew of his existence until today. And you're going to believe it just like that? Without question? Emily's father challenged, his face red with anger. This is obviously a gold digger wanting your money. Just look at the boy, Jack replied, his voice carrying an emotion that surprised everyone. He's my exact copy. Besides, I know Sarah. She was never interested in money. Emily, who had remained silent after the initial shock, let out a hysterical laugh. So that's it. 6 years of relationship thrown away because of an ex who shows up out of nowhere with a supposed child. Jack began, but she interrupted him. No, don't you dare call me M now. Do you have any idea what an embarrassment this will be? The magazines, the newspaper? Thomas is already preparing a statement, Jack intervened. We'll say the cancellation was for personal reasons and ask for privacy. Privacy? Emily's father exploded. You'll be lucky if you're not sued for all the damages and emotional distress. I'll pay all the wedding costs, Jack declared, and I'll financially compensate everyone involved. But I can't go through with this, not now. Grace approached her son, gently touching his arm. Where is he? Where is my grandson? The word grandson seemed to awaken something in everyone present. The reality of the situation was beginning to settle in. It wasn't just a wedding being cancelled, it was a family being rediscovered. In the gardens, Jack replied. And Mom, he's amazing. Emily abruptly stood up, tearing the veil from her head. Great. You all stay with your new happy family. I'm leaving here. Her parents followed her out of the library, shooting furious glances at Jack. Thomas entered soon after, his tablet in hand. Sir, how do you want us to proceed with the guests? Jack looked at his parents, who were still trying to process the news, and then at the library window, where he could see Sarah and Ethan walking among the flowers in the garden. Tell the truth, he answered. Say that I discovered something that changed my life forever, and that I cannot proceed with the wedding being dishonest with myself and everyone involved. The news of the wedding cancellation spread through the castle like wildfire. The guests, between expressions of shock and poorly disguised curiosity, began to disperse, while Thomas's team discreetly coordinated the logistics of ending the event. Jack now found himself in the back garden, observing from afar as his parents met Ethan. Grace was kneeling on the grass, not caring about her party dress, while her grandson enthusiastically showed her a peacock feather he had found. He has your smile, Robert commented, standing next to his son, and the same curious eyes you had as a child. Dad, Jack hesitated, his voice choked. How could I have lost so much time? Robert put his hand on his son's shoulder. The important thing is what you're going to do from now on. Sarah observed the scene from a safe distance, her emotions carefully guarded behind a neutral expression. When Jack approached her, he noticed that her hands were trembling slightly. "Your parents were always good people," she commented softly. "Ethan deserves to know them." "Sarah," Jack began, carefully choosing his words, "I know I have no right to ask this, but can I be part of his life?" She studied him for a long moment before answering. "It won't be simple, Jack. Ethan has an established routine, a structured life. I can't allow him to get hurt." "I completely understand," he replied quickly. "We can do this at whatever pace you think is best. Just don't keep me away from him, please." Before Sarah could respond, Ethan came running towards them, his eyes shining with excitement. "Mom! Mom! Grandma Grace said she has a dog named Max. Can I see him someday?" Sarah shot a questioning look at Jack, who explained, "It's a golden retriever I adopted 2 years ago. He lives at my parents' house because my apartment doesn't allow pets." "Max is a cool name," exclaimed Ethan. "Did you know that in Norse mythology, Thor was the god of thunder?" Jack couldn't contain a smile of pride. "You like mythology?" "He devours every book he finds," Sarah explained, running her hand through her son's hair. "Especially about animals and ancient stories." Grace approached the group, her eyes still misty with emotion. "Sarah, dear, I know it's very sudden, but we'd like to invite you for lunch at our house tomorrow. Something simple, just family." Sarah hesitated, looking at Ethan, who was practically jumping with excitement at the possibility of meeting Max. "I don't know if it would be appropriate, considering the circumstances." "Please, Mom," Ethan begged, "I want to meet Max." Jack observed the interaction, his heart tight. It was strange and wonderful at the same time to see his son, interacting with his parents as if he had known them for years. "I promise it will be just a family lunch," Grace assured. "Robert will make that barbecue that only he knows how to do, and Ethan can play with Max in the garden." Sarah looked at Jack, who maintained a hopeful but contained expression. "All right," she finally agreed, "but we need to establish some clear boundaries." Of course, Grace agreed enthusiastically. "Whatever you think is best." As Ethan celebrated the prospect of meeting Max, Jack gently pulled Sarah aside. "Thank you for this. I know I don't deserve this chance." "I'm not doing this for you," she replied firmly. "I'm doing it for Ethan. He deserves to know his family, his history." "Even so," Jack insisted, "I promise I won't disappoint you." "Not this time." Thomas approached discreetly, interrupting the conversation. "Mr. Thompson, the press is starting to gather at the gates. We need an official statement." Jack nodded, turning to Sarah. "I need to resolve some things. Can you wait in the library? It's more private there, and Ethan can explore the old books." As he watched Sarah and Ethan being led by Grace into the castle, Jack felt a mixture of emotions he had never experienced before. The cancelled wedding, the imminent scandal, the financial losses. None of that seemed important compared to the possibility of getting to know his son. "Thomas," he called, straightening his shoulders, "prepare the statement. But don't mention anything about Ethan or Sarah. Just say that the cancellation was a personal decision and ask for respect for everyone's privacy." It was time to start fixing his mistakes, one step at a time. The aroma of barbecue filled the garden of the Thompson mansion on that sunny Sunday. Robert was focused on the grill, while Grace ran from one side to the other, making sure everything was perfect for receiving her newly discovered grandson. Jack arrived early, his Porsche parked in the circular driveway of the mansion. He had spent a sleepless night, alternating between rereading old photos of Sarah in college and researching late fatherhood on the internet. "Son," Grace called from the porch, "come help me with this table." As they organized the plates and cutlery in the outdoor area, Max, the golden retriever, wagged his tail anxiously as if he knew special visitors were on the way. "Have you talked to Emily?" Grace asked cautiously, arranging the linen napkins. Jack shook his head. "She's not answering my calls. Her lawyer contacted me demanding compensation for moral and material damages. And you're going to pay?" "I will," he answered simply. "It's the least I can do after everything." The sound of a car approaching made Max bark excitedly. Sarah parked her modest Volkswagen Jetta next to Jack's Porsche, creating a contrast that didn't go unnoticed. Ethan got out of the car like a whirlwind, his eyes immediately finding Max. "Look, Mom, it's him!" Sarah smiled, adjusting the pie she had brought in her hands. She wore a simple floral dress, and her hair was loose in the wind, so different from the always well-groomed women who frequented Jack's social circle. "Max, calm down," Jack commanded, holding the dog who was jumping with joy. "Ethan, would you like to do the honors of meeting him?" The boy approached cautiously, extending his hand as Sarah had taught him. Max sniffed his fingers and immediately licked his face, drawing laughter from everyone. "He liked you," Jack commented, watching his son and his dog interact as if they were old friends. The lunch was going surprisingly well. Robert served his famous steaks, while Grace couldn't stop filling Ethan's plate with all possible treats. "So, champ," Robert began during dessert, "your mother told me you like books about animals." Ethan nodded enthusiastically, his mouth dirty with chocolate. "I have a whole collection. Did you know that giraffes only sleep 30 minutes a day?" Jack watched in wonder at every expression, every gesture of his son. It was amazing how he had inherited not only his appearance, but also his thirst for knowledge. "Ethan," Sarah called softly, "why don't you go play with Max a bit more while the adults talk?" As soon as the boy moved away with the dog, the atmosphere became more serious. Grace served coffee for everyone, while Jack gathered courage for the conversation they needed to have. "Sarah," he began, "I want to be part of his life. Officially, I want to register him, contribute financially, be present." "Jack," she interrupted, "it's not that simple. Ethan has an established life. He attends a public school near home, has his friends, his routine. We can enroll him in the best school in the city," he suggested quickly. "I can buy a bigger apartment for you, closer to here." "Stop," Sarah cut him off firmly. "This is exactly why I never looked for you after Ethan was born. I don't want him growing up thinking that everything is solved with money." Grace gently touched Sarah's hand. "Dear, Jack just wants to help, even if in a clumsy way." "I know," Sarah sighed, "but I need to protect my son. Our life may be simple, but it's honest and happy. I don't want him to become like I became," Jack completed, his voice laden with regret. The silence that followed was heavy. In the background, they could hear Ethan's laughter playing with Max. "I'm not that ambitious man who left you anymore, Sarah," Jack continued. "Yesterday, when I cancelled my wedding, I realized that all the achievements I sought mean nothing compared to what I lost in these years." Sarah studied his face for a long moment. "Prove it," she finally said. "Prove that you've changed, not with money or expensive gifts, but with time, dedication, and respect for the boundaries we establish." Jack nodded solemnly. "That's all I ask. A chance to prove that I can be the father Ethan deserves." Robert cleared his throat, emotional. "And we want to be the grandparents he deserves too." The sound of something breaking, followed by a startled bark, interrupted the conversation. They all quickly stood up, running towards the noise. Running towards the sound, they found Ethan sitting on the garden floor with Max by his side, near a broken Chinese vase from Grace's collection. The boy had teary eyes, more from fright than pain. "Ethan!" exclaimed Sarah, running to her son, but before she reached him, Jack was already there, kneeling beside the boy. "Are you okay, champ?" I'm sorry," Ethan stammered, looking scared at the shards of the vase. "We were playing and I bumped into—" "Don't worry about the vase," Grace quickly interrupted. "The important thing is to know if you're hurt." Jack carefully examined his son's arms and legs, finding only a small scratch on his knee. Without thinking twice, he took his silk handkerchief from his pocket and improvised a bandage. "Was that vase important?" asked Ethan, still worried. "Not as important as you," Jack replied firmly, surprising everyone, including himself, with the naturalness of his paternal response. Sarah observed the scene with a mixture of emotions. It was the first time she saw Jack truly acting as a father, putting Ethan's well-being above any material thing. "Let's clean that scratch properly," Grace suggested, taking her grandson's hand. "I have a first aid kit with Avengers Band-Aids. Do you like the Avengers?" As Grace took Ethan inside, followed by Robert, who was already starting to tell stories about when Jack was little and always getting hurt, Sarah and Jack stayed behind, looking at the shards of the vase. "That vase," Sarah began, "was really valuable, wasn't it?" Jack shrugged. "It was a piece from the Ming dynasty, but honestly, seeing our son smile is worth more than any antique." "Our son," Sarah repeated softly. "It's the first time you've spoken like that." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "No, it's okay," she interrupted. "It's just that it's different seeing you like this." And the Jack I knew would have been furious about a broken vase. He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that Sarah remembered well from college days. The Jack you knew was an idiot obsessed with status and money. And this Jack now, she asked, starting to collect the shards. Is trying to be better, he answered, crouching down to help her. For Ethan. For you too, if you'll let me. Their fingers briefly touched as they collected the fragments, sending a familiar electric current through both of them. Sarah quickly withdrew her hand, but the moment didn't go unnoticed. From inside the house, they could hear Ethan's laughter mixed with the animated voices of his grandparents. Max barked occasionally, completing the family symphony. Sarah, Jack called, his voice serious, I know I have no right to ask anything, but I'd like to establish a routine with Ethan, to be able to pick him up from school sometimes, spend some weekends with him. She considered for a moment before answering. We can start slowly, maybe one day a week after school, but with some conditions. Which ones? First, no expensive or extravagant gifts. I don't want him associating your love with material goods. Jack nodded. Fair enough, what else? Second, I need you to be consistent. If you promise to be with him, follow through. Ethan has had too many disappointments in life without a father figure. The words hit Jack like a punch to the stomach, but he maintained his composure. I won't disappoint him. Or you. And third, she continued, we need to tell him the truth about you being his father, but at the right time and in the right way. Whenever you think it's the appropriate time, he agreed. I'll do everything your way. Ethan came running back to the garden, proudly displaying an Iron Man Band-Aid on his knee. Grace came right behind, carrying a tray with milkshakes. Look, Mom. Grandma Grace made chocolate milkshake, just like you make for me when I get hurt. Sarah and Jack exchanged a significant look. Somehow, even without knowing, Ethan was already building connections with his paternal family. And maybe, just maybe, there was hope to build something new from the fragments of the past, just like the shards of the vase in their hands. The following weeks brought a new routine for everyone. Every Wednesday, promptly at 5:30 p.m., Jack parked his car, now a discreet BMW sedan, replacing the flashy Porsche, in front of the public school where Ethan studied. On that particular Wednesday, while waiting at the school exit, Jack observed the other families. Mothers, fathers, and caregivers, all there fulfilling a routine that was still a precious novelty for him. His cell phone vibrated with work messages, but for the first time in his life, the urgent emails could wait. Uncle Jack! Ethan's excited voice echoed across the schoolyard. They still hadn't told the truth to the boy, following the advice of the child psychologist Sarah had consulted. Hey, champ, how was class today? Asked Jack, taking his son's backpack, a gesture that had already become natural. The teacher let me present my whale project to the whole class. Ethan began to talk, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Did you know that blue whales are the largest animals that have ever existed? Bigger even than dinosaurs. Jack smiled, absorbing every word with genuine interest. Really? Tell me more about it on the way to the ice cream parlor. The neighborhood ice cream parlor had become their Wednesday ritual. It was a simple, family-friendly establishment, very different from the sophisticated places Jack used to frequent. But seeing Ethan's joy in choosing his favorite flavors was worth more than any starred restaurant. 2 scoops of chocolate with strawberry topping, Ethan ordered automatically, already knowing his order by heart. And a vanilla sundae for me, added Jack, observing how his son swung his legs on the high chair, unable to reach the floor. Uncle Jack, Ethan began, licking his spoon, why do you never bring Aunt Emily on our outings? The question caught Jack by surprise. It was the first time Ethan had mentioned his ex-fiancée. Well, sometimes people plan things that end up changing, you know? Like when I really wanted a hamster, but Mom explained that our apartment doesn't allow pets. Jack smiled at the innocent comparison. Something like that. Sometimes we think we want one thing, but we discover that what really matters is different from what we imagined. And what matters to you? Asked Ethan, his childish perspicacity sometimes frightening. Jack felt a lump in his throat. You matter, he answered sincerely. Your mother, my parents, spending time like this with you. Jack's cell phone vibrated again, this time with a message from Sarah. Don't forget that Ethan has swimming class at 7 p.m. today. Finished with the ice cream, champ? We need to go to your swimming class. On the way to the gym, Ethan talked about his plans to become a professional diver, to study the whales he so admired. Jack listened attentively, asking questions and nurturing that childish dream as he wished someone had done with his own dreams when he was a child. At the gym, Sarah was already waiting for them. She had just finished work at the school where she taught, still wearing her teacher's coat. "Mom!" Ethan ran to hug her. "I told Uncle Jack about the whales." "Really?" Sarah smiled, adjusting her son's hair. "And did you tell him about the A you got on the project?" Jack's eyes shone with pride. "An A? That deserves a special celebration this weekend." "Can we go to the aquarium?" asked Ethan, jumping with excitement. "Please, Mom." Sarah and Jack exchanged a knowing look. She nodded slightly, a small smile on her lips. "If your mother agrees," Jack replied, "we can all go together on Saturday." "All together?" Ethan's eyes widened with joy. "Yes, all together," Sarah confirmed, surprising even herself with the naturalness of the response. As Ethan ran to his swimming instructor, Jack and Sarah stayed behind, watching him walk away. "He's happy," Sarah commented softly. "Do you think it's time?" Jack asked, knowing she would understand the question. "To tell him?" Sarah sighed, thoughtful. "The psychologist said he's reacting well to your constant presence. Maybe after the aquarium trip." "No rush," Jack assured. "We'll do it your way at his pace." The sound of children's laughter echoed from the pool, where Ethan was already playing with his classmates. Jack and Sarah remained there, side by side, watching their son, a different family, still under construction, but each day more real. Saturday dawned sunny, perfect for the aquarium trip. Jack arrived early at the modest apartment building where Sarah and Ethan lived, parking his BMW next to much simpler cars. He looked at the package on the passenger seat, a book about marine life he had bought for Ethan, and smiled, remembering the promise not to give extravagant gifts. When he rang the doorbell, he heard Ethan's hurried footsteps on the other side of the door. I'm coming!" the boy shouted excitedly. Sarah opened the door wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair tied in a casual ponytail. Jack felt his heart speed up slightly, remembering how she used to dress like this in college days. "Good morning," she greeted with a shy smile. "Come in, Ethan's almost ready." The apartment was small but cozy. Photos of Ethan at various ages decorated the walls, along with his drawings and school projects. Jack felt a pang of regret for all the memories he had missed. "Look, Uncle Jack," exclaimed Ethan, coming out of the bedroom wearing a t-shirt with dolphin prints. "Mom bought it for me yesterday." "Wow, it looks awesome," Jack praised, handing the package to Ethan. "I brought a little something for you." The boy's eyes lit up as he tore the paper and revealed the book. "Mom, look! It's just like the one I saw at the bookstore last week." Sarah gave Jack a grateful look. She knew the book wasn't cheap, but she appreciated the fact that it was an educational gift and not something ostentatious. The drive to the aquarium was filled with Ethan's animated voice, reading facts from his new book. Jack drove, occasionally exchanging glances through the rearview mirror with Sarah, who smiled at their son's enthusiasm. At the aquarium, Ethan seemed to be in another world. His wide eyes reflected the blue of the huge tanks as he ran from one exhibit to another, dragging Jack and Sarah along. "Look, they're penguins," he shouted, pressing his face against the glass of one of the exhibits. "They look like they're wearing tuxedos." Jack crouched down next to his son, equally fascinated. "Did you know that penguins choose a mate for life?" he commented, casting a quick glance at Sarah. She blushed slightly, averting her gaze to focus on the penguins. "Ethan, do you want me to take a picture of you with the penguins?" As Sarah positioned herself for the photo, Jack observed father and son side by side, so similar in their gestures and expressions. It was like looking at a mirror of the past and future simultaneously. The afternoon flew by among sharks, rays, and a dolphin show that left Ethan ecstatic. When they reached the acrylic tunnel that passed through a giant tank, the boy was speechless with admiration. "It's like being inside the ocean," he whispered, looking up where a whale shark swam majestically. Jack and Sarah stood on either side of Ethan, their shoulders touching slightly as they observed the scene. For a moment, they seemed like the perfect family they could have been. "Thank you for this," Sarah murmured to Jack, her voice almost inaudible over the murmur of other visitors. "He's never been so happy." Jack felt a lump in his throat. "I'm the one who should thank you for giving me this chance." As they left the aquarium already in the late afternoon, Ethan was exhausted but radiant. On the way back, he fell asleep in the back seat, hugging his new book. "I think it's time," Sarah said softly, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled in the car. "To tell him." Jack gripped the steering wheel, a mix of anxiety and relief coursing through his body. "Are you sure?" She nodded, looking at their sleeping son in the rearview mirror. "He deserves to know, and you've proven that you're really committed." Parking in front of Sarah's building, Jack turned off the engine but made no move to get out of the car. "How should we do this?" "We can tell him together," she suggested. "Tomorrow, at lunch, at your parents' house. Ethan loves going there, and having family support might help." Jack agreed, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of expectation at the same time. He looked at Ethan, still sleeping peacefully, and at Sarah, whose eyes reflected a mix of emotions he couldn't completely decipher. "Sarah," he began, hesitant, "I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think we could ever be a real family?" She stared at him for a long moment before answering. "Jack, we already are a family. Different, complicated, but a family. The rest, only time will tell." As he helped carry the still sleeping Ethan to the apartment, Jack felt that for the first time in a long time, he was exactly where he should be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he was ready to face them, no longer alone but with his family by his side. Sunday dawned with a mixture of anxiety and expectation hanging in the air. Jack arrived early at his parents' house, helping with the preparations for lunch. Grace was preparing Ethan's favorite dessert, chocolate pudding, while Robert marinated the meat for the barbecue. "Son, are you sure you're ready for this?" asked Grace, noticing the tension in Jack's shoulders. "Honestly, I don't know, Mom," he replied, running his hand through his hair. "But Sarah is right. Ethan deserves to know the truth." The sound of the doorbell made Jack's heart leap. As he opened the door, he was greeted by Ethan's radiant smile. "Hi, Uncle Jack. I brought my new book to show Grandpa Robert," exclaimed the boy, entering like a whirlwind. Sarah entered right behind, carrying a covered dish. "I made that salad your mother likes," she said, handing the dish to Jack. Their fingers touched briefly, and for a moment they stood there looking at each other, the weight of what they were about to do palpable between them. Lunch proceeded in a cheerful atmosphere, with Ethan dominating the conversation, animatedly recounting the aquarium trip. Jack and Sarah exchanged nervous glances, knowing the moment was approaching. After dessert, when everyone was relaxed in the living room, Sarah gave Jack a slight nod. It was time. "Ethan," Jack called, his voice betraying a slight tremor. "Can we talk for a bit? Your mum and I have something important to tell you." The boy, sensing the seriousness in the tone, put down his book and sat between them on the couch. Grace and Robert remained discreetly in the background, offering silent support. "Remember when we talked about different types of families?" Sarah began softly. Ethan nodded. "Yes, like Julia in my class who has 2 moms." "Exactly," she continued. "Well, our family is a little different too." Jack took a deep breath before speaking. "Ethan, you know I like you very much, don't you?" "Of course, Uncle Jack, I like you a lot too. And if I told you that I'm not exactly your uncle?" Jack felt his voice falter. Ethan furrowed his brow, confused. "What do you mean?" Sarah gently took her son's hand. "Sweetheart, remember when you asked me about your father, and I said he was far away, but that one day I would explain everything?" The boy's eyes widened, alternating between Jack and Sarah. "Uncle Jack is my dad?" The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Jack felt his heart pounding in his chest, fearing his son's reaction. "Yes, Ethan," Sarah confirmed. "Jack is your father." Ethan remained quiet for a moment, processing the information. Then, to everyone's surprise, a huge smile spread across his face. "I knew it!" he exclaimed. "I mean, I didn't know, but I felt it. That's why we like the same things and have the same eyes." Jack felt tears forming in his eyes. You're not angry with me for not being present before." Ethan seemed to think for a moment. "A little sad, maybe. But you're here now, aren't you? And we do a lot of cool things together." Sarah smiled, moved by her son's maturity. "That's right, sweetheart. Your father is here now and he loves you very much." "Can I call you Dad now?" Ethan asked, looking hopefully at Jack. Jack couldn't hold back the tears. "Of course you can, son. Nothing would make me happier." Ethan jumped into Jack's lap, hugging him tightly. "Dad! I have a dad!" Grace and Robert approached, their eyes misty. "And don't forget the grandparents," Robert joked, joining the hug. As the family celebrated this new beginning, Sarah observed the scene with a mixture of relief and emotion. Jack extended his hand to her, inviting her to join the family hug. At that moment, surrounded by the love of his newly formed family, Jack knew that all the riches he had accumulated over the years did not compare to the treasure he now held in his arms. The weeks that followed the revelation were an emotional roller coaster and a period of adjustment for everyone. Ethan, with the characteristic enthusiasm of childhood, embraced the new reality with contagious joy. For him, having a father was like gaining a personal superhero. Jack, in turn, dove headfirst into his new role. His priorities changed drastically. Business meetings were rescheduled to accommodate school presentations, and his penthouse office gained a special corner with toys and children's books. On a Wednesday afternoon, Jack was in his office finalizing an important video conference when his cell phone vibrated with a message from Sarah. "Ethan has a fever. I need to pick him up from school, but I'm stuck in a teacher's meeting. Can you go?" Without hesitation, Jack apologized to the executives on the screen, abruptly ending the meeting. "Family emergency," he explained, already shutting down the computer. Arriving at the school, he found Ethan in the infirmary, pale and quiet, a sight that tightened his heart. "Dad," murmured the boy, extending his arms for a hug. Jack picked him up, feeling the heat of the fever. "It's okay, champ, let's go home." On the way, he stopped at a pharmacy to buy antipyretic and other medications that the school nurse had recommended. Arriving at Sarah's apartment, Jack found himself in a completely new situation, taking care of a sick child alone. With Ethan snuggled on the couch, Jack prepared a cold compress for his forehead and tried to make soup, following a recipe he found on the internet. Sarah arrived a few hours later, finding the kitchen in a chaotic state, but Ethan sleeping peacefully with Jack by his side, reading one of his favorite books in a low voice. "How is he?" she asked, worried. "The fever went down," Jack replied, his voice mixing relief and pride. "I managed to get him to eat some soup too." Sarah smiled, touched by Jack's dedication. "Thank you for taking care of him. I know you probably had important commitments." "Nothing is more important than our son," he interrupted softly. The hour hung in the air between them, laden with meaning. In the days that followed, as Ethan recovered, Jack practically moved into the apartment, sleeping on the couch to be nearby in case the boy needed anything during the night. This forced proximity brought to the surface feelings long buried between Jack and Sarah. Sharing simple meals in the small kitchen, taking turns caring for Ethan, they rediscovered an intimacy that went beyond co-parenting. One night after putting Ethan to bed, they stayed talking on the tiny apartment balcony, the city lights shining in the distance. "You know," Jack began, looking at the teacup in his hands, "taking care of Ethan these days made me realize how much I missed. Not just him growing up, but us." Sarah looked at him sideways, a mixture of caution and curiosity in her eyes. "Jack, no, please let me finish," he gently requested. "I know I made unforgivable mistakes, that I hurt you deeply. But these days, seeing you as a mother, remembering the incredible woman you've always been, Sarah, I never stopped loving you." The silence that followed was heavy, full of unspoken possibilities and fears. "I've been thinking a lot too," Sarah finally responded, her voice almost a whisper, "about the past, the present. Seeing you with Ethan, so dedicated, so different from the man who left me, I confess it affected me." Jack felt his heart accelerate. Cautiously, he extended his hand, lightly touching Sarah's fingers. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just want you to know that if one day you want to try again to build something together, as a real family, I'll be here. No pressure, at your own pace." Sarah didn't withdraw her hand. Instead, she intertwined her fingers with Jack's, looking at the city below. "One step at a time," she murmured, a small smile forming on her lips. That night, as the city slept outside, two souls wounded by the past began hesitantly to dream of a future together. In the room next door, Ethan slept peacefully, unaware of the changes unfolding, but secure in the love of his parents. The months that followed brought a series of subtle but significant changes. Jack, determined to be a constant presence in Ethan and Sarah's lives, rented an apartment in the same neighborhood. It was nothing compared to his luxurious penthouse, but the proximity to his newly discovered family was worth more than any amenity. A routine began to establish itself naturally. Breakfast together before Ethan's school became an almost daily ritual. Jack discovered the joy of preparing animal-shaped sandwiches and listening to Ethan's animated stories about his dreams from the night before. Sarah, initially cautious about the growing closeness, began to lower her defenses gradually. Seeing him interacting with Ethan, helping with school assignments and showing up for every school event, no matter how small, made her see a side of Jack she didn't even know existed. On a Saturday afternoon, while helping Ethan assemble a science project about the solar system, Jack made a suggestion that caught Sarah by surprise. "What do you think about going camping on the next holiday?" he asked, gluing paper stars onto a styrofoam ball representing Jupiter. "I know a great place in the mountains, with a perfect sky for stargazing." Ethan's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Can we really? Please, Mom, say yes." Sarah hesitated. The idea of spending entire days, 24 hours a day, with Jack was both tempting and frightening. "I don't know, sir. Camping isn't really my thing." "Come on, Mom," Ethan pleaded. "Dad said he'll teach me how to make a campfire." The term dad still caused a wave of emotions in Sarah every time she heard it. She looked at Jack, who maintained a hopeful expression but didn't push. "All right," she finally yielded, unable to resist her son's enthusiasm. "But you," she pointed at Jack, "are responsible for all the equipment and food." The camping weekend arrived faster than Sarah expected. To her surprise, Jack had thought of everything, from comfortable tents to headlamps for Ethan, who was fascinated by the idea of being a night explorer. At night, sitting around the campfire that Jack and Ethan had proudly lit together, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Ethan dozed in her lap, exhausted after a day of hiking and playing, while Jack roasted marshmallows. "You know," Jack began softly, looking at the stars, "when I was building my career, I thought success would bring me happiness. But being here, with you two, makes me realize how wrong I was." Sarah observed him for a moment, noticing how the firelight softened his features, making him look more like the young man she had fallen in love with in college. "People can change, can't they?" she murmured, more to herself than to him. Jack nodded, his eyes meeting hers. "They can. Sometimes they need to lose something precious to understand what really matters." That night, after putting Ethan to bed in the tent, Jack and Sarah stayed up talking like they hadn't in years. They shared fears, dreams, and regrets. The barrier Sarah had built over the years began to dissolve under the starry sky. The next morning, as they prepared breakfast together, their hands touched as they reached for the same pan. Instead of moving away, they stayed there, fingers intertwined, looking at each other with a mix of nostalgia and hope. Ethan, coming out of the tent sleepily, caught them in that intimate moment. His face lit up with a smile. "You look happy," he commented innocently. Sarah and Jack separated, a slight blush on their faces, but the moment wasn't lost. Something had changed. A bridge was beginning to be rebuilt. On the way back to the city, with Ethan sleeping in the back seat of the car, Sarah broke the comfortable silence. "Jack, I think we're ready to take the next step." He glanced at her quickly, without taking his eyes off the road, his heart racing. "What step would that be?" "A dinner," she replied with a small smile. "Just the two of us. To talk about us." Jack felt a wave of happiness wash over him. "I'd love that," he responded, his voice laden with emotion. As the car followed the winding road back to the city, both felt they were on the right path. It wouldn't be easy. There was much to be discussed and healed, but the love that had never really died was beginning to bloom again, more mature and stronger than before. The promised dinner took place on a Friday night, 2 weeks after the camping trip. Ethan stayed with his paternal grandparents, excited about the prospect of a night of games and stories with Grandpa Robert. Jack chose a discreet restaurant, away from the spotlight and media that still occasionally pursued him. It was a cozy place, with low lights and soft music in the background, intimate enough for a serious conversation, but without the pressure of an excessively romantic environment. Sarah arrived punctually, wearing a simple but elegant dress. Jack was waiting for her at the entrance, his heart racing when he saw her, a reaction that not even the years of separation had managed to erase. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely, pulling out the chair for her to sit. "Thank you," Sarah replied, a slight blush on her cheeks. "It's been a long time since I've gone out like this. Just me." The conversation flowed naturally as they enjoyed the appetizer. They talked about Ethan, about Sarah's work at the school and Jack's new projects. It was only after the main course, when the waiter brought a bottle of wine that Jack had carefully selected, that they finally addressed the subject that hung between them. "Sarah," Jack began, his voice serious but gentle, "these last few months have been incredible. Seeing Ethan grow, being part of his life, and being close to you again. I know I made terrible mistakes in the past, and I understand if you can never fully forgive me, but I want you to know that I've changed, that I understood what really matters in life." Sarah observed him for a moment, twirling the wine glass in her hands. "Jack, I'm not going to lie. For a long time I carried a lot of hurt and resentment. Raising Ethan alone, seeing him grow up without a father, was difficult. But seeing you now, the way you dedicate yourself to him, how you've been trying, that moved me." Jack reached out across the table, gently touching Sarah's fingers. To his surprise and joy, she didn't pull away. "What I'm trying to say," she continued, "is that I'm willing to try, to give us a second chance. It won't be easy. We have a lot to rebuild, but for Ethan and maybe for ourselves, I want to try." Jack's eyes shone with contained emotion. "Sarah, I promise I'll do everything in my power to deserve this chance. To be the man, the father, and the partner that you and Ethan deserve." They spent the rest of the night talking, laughing, and sometimes even crying a little, reminiscing about the past and cautiously planning a future together. When they left the restaurant, walking hand in hand under the stars, both felt that a new chapter was beginning. In the weeks that followed, Jack and Sarah started dating again, this time with the maturity and understanding that the years and experiences had brought. For Ethan, seeing his parents together was like a dream come true. On a sunny Sunday, while having a picnic in the park, an activity that had become a family tradition, Jack surprised both Sarah and Ethan. "I have an idea," he announced as Ethan played with Max, who now accompanied them on all outings. "What do you think about all of us living together?" Ethan almost dropped his sandwich with excitement. "Really? Like a real family?" Sarah looked at Jack, a mixture of surprise and caution in her eyes. "Are you sure?" "It's a big step." Jack nodded, holding her hand. "I am. I don't want to miss any more moments with you. We can look for a new house, a place that's ours, to start this new phase together." Sarah smiled, tears of happiness forming in her eyes. "I think we'd love that, wouldn't we, Ethan?" The boy responded by jumping for joy and hugging them both. Max barked excitedly, as if understanding the importance of the moment. There, under the midday sun, surrounded by Ethan's laughter and Max's affection, Jack and Sarah sealed their commitment with a tender kiss. It was more than a new beginning. It was the promise of a bright future, built on the foundations of love, forgiveness, and the family they had always been destined to be. 2 years passed since that picnic in the park, where Jack proposed they live together. The life of the Thompson family had transformed completely, in ways none of them could have predicted. The new house they chose was spacious yet cozy, located in a quiet neighborhood with lots of greenery around. Ethan, now 8 years old, had his own room decorated with marine themes. His love for the ocean had only grown over time. On this particular Saturday morning, the house was in a flurry of activity. Guests were starting to arrive for a very special occasion, Jack and Sarah's wedding. Unlike the lavish event Jack had planned years ago, this was an intimate wedding with only close family and friends. The backyard of the house had been transformed into a fairy tale setting, with wildflowers and delicate lights hanging from the trees. In the master bedroom, Sarah adjusted her simple but elegant dress, assisted by her mother and Grace, who couldn't contain tears of happiness. "Who would have thought?" Sarah's mother commented. "After everything you've been through." Sarah smiled, looking at herself in the mirror. It wasn't just the reflection of a bride she saw, but of a woman who had gone through trials, grown, and finally found her complete happiness. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Can I come in?" Ethan's voice sounded from the other side. When they opened the door, the boy entered, impeccable in his ring-bearer suit, carrying a small box. "Dad asked me to deliver this," he said, extending the box to Sarah. Inside was a delicate pearl necklace with a note. "For new beginnings and old promises kept, I love you, Jack." Outside, Jack waited anxiously under the floral arch. Robert, his best man, gave a comforting pat on his back. "Relax, son. This is the day you've both waited for so long." Soft music began to play, and all the guests turned. Ethan appeared first, carrying the rings with a radiant smile. And then Sarah appeared. Jack felt his heart stop for a moment. There she was, the woman he had left behind years ago, the mother of his child, the person who had given him a second chance in life. Tears of happiness and gratitude filled his eyes. The ceremony was brief and emotional. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye among the guests. "Sarah," Jack began, his voice choked. "Years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life by leaving you. But fate, in its infinite wisdom, gave us a second chance. I promised to spend every day of my life loving you, respecting you, and being the man that you and Ethan deserve." Sarah, with tears in her eyes, responded, "Jack, our journey wasn't easy, but every obstacle brought us here. You're not just the father of my child, but my best friend, my partner, and my love. I promise to be by your side, in good times and bad, building our family with love and understanding." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Ethan was the first to run and hug them, creating a family embrace that symbolized everything they had fought for. The party that followed was joyful and relaxed. Jack and Sarah danced their first dance as a couple to the sound of "The Way You Look Tonight," the same song that was playing when they met in college. Later, while the guests were enjoying themselves, Jack found a moment to be alone with Ethan. "How are you feeling, champ?" he asked, crouching down to be at his son's height. Ethan smiled, his eyes, so similar to his father's, shining with happiness. "Happy, Dad, very happy. Now we're a real family, aren't we?" Jack hugged his son tightly. "We always were, son, but now it's complete." Sarah joined them, enveloping both in a hug. For a moment, they stood there, the three of them together, savoring the perfection of that instant. As night fell and the last guests left, Jack, Sarah, and Ethan sat on the porch of their house looking at the stars. Max, old but still faithful, slept at their feet. "Did you know that the stars we see now might have died millions of years ago?" Ethan commented, always eager to share his knowledge. Jack smiled, exchanging a knowing look with Sarah. "It's true, son. But you know something? Some stars, even after so long, shine brighter than ever." 10 years later, the morning sun filtered through the curtains of Ethan's room, now 18 years old, illuminating walls still decorated with posters of marine animals and constellations. The young man stirred in bed, resisting the inevitable awakening. "Ethan!" Sarah's voice sounded from downstairs. "You'll be late for the graduation ceremony." With a groan, Ethan finally got up, running his hand through his dark hair, so similar to Jack's. He looked at himself in the mirror, adjusting his school uniform tie for the last time. In the kitchen, he found a familiar and comforting scene. Sarah, with some gray strands mixed in her brown hair, was preparing pancakes. Jack, also showing signs of the passage of time, was sitting at the table, dividing his attention between the digital newspaper and 2 5-year-old twin girls. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Jack joked, looking up. "Ready for the big day?" Ethan smiled, grabbing a pancake. "More or less. It's weird to think it's the last day of school." The twins, Olivia and Emma, vied for their older brother's attention. "Ethan, are you really going away to college?" asked Olivia, her big eyes full of concern. "I am, little one," he replied, ruffling his sister's hair. "But I'll always come back to visit, I promise." Breakfast proceeded with the usual mixture of chaos and affection that characterized the Thompson family mornings. While helping to clear the table, Ethan noticed his parents exchanging knowing looks. "What is it?" he asked, suspicious. Sarah smiled. "We have a surprise for you, but only after the graduation." The graduation ceremony was emotional. Ethan, as class valedictorian, gave a touching speech about growth, second chances, and the power of family love. In the front rows, Jack and Sarah couldn't contain tears of pride. After the ceremony, while classmates said goodbye and made summer plans, the Thompson family gathered in the school parking lot. "So what's the surprise?" Ethan asked, eager. Jack smiled, handing an envelope to his son. "Open it." Inside, Ethan found plane tickets and a detailed itinerary. His eyes widened as he read the destination. Galapagos. You're sending me to Galapagos?" he asked, incredulous. "Not exactly," Sarah replied, smiling. "We're all going, a family trip before you leave for college." Ethan was speechless, hugging his parents tightly. The twins jumped for joy, even without fully understanding what Galapagos meant. 2 weeks later, the Thompson family disembarked on the islands that had inspired Charles Darwin. For Ethan, who dreamed of becoming a marine biologist, it was like stepping into paradise. As they explored the islands, observing marine iguanas, giant tortoises, and an incredible diversity of birds, Ethan reflected on his own journey. Like those species that had evolved and adapted over millions of years, his family had also gone through extraordinary transformations. One afternoon, while swimming with sea lions, Ethan observed his parents. Jack and Sarah, holding hands, seemed as in love as in the early days of their marriage. The twins, using inflatable floats, screamed with joy every time a sea lion passed near them. That night, sitting on the beach watching the sunset, Jack pulled Ethan aside for a private conversation. "Son," he began, "looking back at everything we've been through, there's something I want you to always remember." Ethan looked at his father, curious. "Life is like these islands," Jack continued, gesturing to the landscape around them. "Full of challenges, unexpected changes. There will be times when you'll feel lost like I felt so many years ago. But if you stay true to who you are, if you value love and family above all else, you'll find your way." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of his father's words. "How did you find yours?" Jack smiled, looking at Sarah and the twins building sandcastles further down the beach. "I realized that true success isn't in what we achieve for ourselves, but in what we can give to others. Your mother and you taught me that." Father and son remained silent for a moment, contemplating the horizon where the sun was sinking into the ocean. "Dad," Ethan finally said, "thank you. For everything. For coming back. For fighting for our family." Jack hugged his son, tears in both their eyes. "No, son. I'm the one who should thank you. You and your mother gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. You saved me." As they walked back to join the rest of the family, Ethan felt a deep gratitude for the extraordinary journey that brought him here, for the parents who learned from their mistakes and built something beautiful from them, and for the little sisters who were living proof of his parents' renewed love. The future, like the Galapagos Islands, was full of evolutionary possibilities. Ethan knew that no matter what life had in store for him, he would always have his parents' example to guide him, a living testament that love, when true and nurtured, can overcome any obstacle. As night fell over the Galapagos, enveloping the Thompson family in its starry mantle, Ethan smiled. This trip wasn't just an ending, but a new beginning, a reminder that each day is an opportunity to evolve, to love, to rediscover oneself. And so, under the infinite sky of Galapagos, a family that had navigated turbulent seas found their safe harbor, anchored in the love they had cultivated and the lessons they had learned along the way.
We'd love to hear if you're excited about this story. If you had a good time watching the video, go ahead and press 1. If that's not the case, just press 0. Your feedback truly motivates me to collect more heartwarming and significant stories. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me.